Hi there and welcome to another video from Hegarty Maths. It's Mr. Hegarty here, and in this video we're solving two-step equations where we have a negative x. So let's start as we always do with something we've done on a previous skill. You've been able to solve two-step equations for x before, so pause the video and double check you could do the following. Okay, hopefully you did something like this. You realised that here we were thinking of a number, we multiplied by 3 and added 2 and got 12. So our first step of finding x would be to subtract 2 off both sides, then we divided both sides by 3 and we left our answer as x is 10/3. You could try and put it back in to see if you got the right answer. 3 multiplied by 10/3 is going to be 10, 10 add 2 is 12, we got the right answer, we checked it and we're happy. So I know you're good at that sort of thing. This is the type of thing we're going to do in this video. Let's have a look. Now it's very similar. We've got a 2, but this time we've got negative 3x is equal to 12. Now, have a pause and think, could you solve that? Well, this is what I'd do. I'd think to myself, that 2 there, I'm going to remove that from both sides just like I did before. So I'm going to subtract 2 off both sides in the exact same way I did before. And what would I be left with here? Well, 2 take away 2 is 0. I purposely picked that. Here, we're not left with 3x. Remember, we've got that negative there. So we've got negative 3x is equal to 10. And this time, I'm not going to divide both sides by 3. I'm going to divide both sides by, that's right, negative 3. And what would I have on the left-hand side? Well, I'd have x, because that negative 3 multiplying cancels with that negative 3 dividing. And positive 10 divided by negative 3, a positive divided by a negative is overall negative, and we would just have 10/3. So I just wanted to do a skill on this. Just careful when we've got a negative x on the go here. It takes a tiny bit more care to think what to do, and especially with dividing by negatives, etc. So let's have a go at these type of questions. At each stage, pause the video and try yourself. Here's the first one. Have a go at this one here. Right, what I would have done is I would have subtracted 5 off both sides to remove that 5 here. And what would I have been left with? I'd have been left with not 4x, but negative 4x is equal to 11 take away 5, which is 6. Then I would divide both sides by not 4, but negative 4. And that multiply negative 4 and divide by negative 4 cancel. And I'm simply left with x. I've found x. Positive 6 divided by negative 4, overall a negative answer, 6/4. But hopefully you're shouting at the screen, I can't leave it like that, I must simplify it. I could divide by the highest common factor of 6 and 4, which is 2, and I would get negative 3/2. And we're done. If you substitute that in there, 4 times negative 3/2 is going to be negative 6. 5 subtract negative 6 is like 5 add 6, which is 11. Now, I've just done the same equation on this side because sometimes students don't like the dividing by negatives and things like that. And there is a little trick you can do that might make it easier for some people. When they see a negative x on one side, if they were to multiply both sides by negative 1, what would you get? Well, negative 4x, if you multiply it by negative 1, it would become positive 4x. And positive 5, if you multiplied it by negative 1, would be negative 5. And that would equal 11 multiplied by negative 1 would be negative 11. That little step of multiplying both sides by negative 1 just makes anything that was negative positive and anything that was positive negative. And students are back into a familiar territory where they have a nice positive amount of x's that they like dealing with. In this case then, to solve it, I would have added 5 to both sides. I'd have got myself on the left hand side 4x. Negative 11 add 5 is negative 6. I would have divided both sides therefore by 4. And I would have got myself again that x is going to be negative 3/2. It's up to you which method you prefer. Totally and utterly up to you. I tend to like multiplying by negative 1, but that's my preference. If you prefer this way, that's totally up to you. Let's try another one. You decide what way you want to do it. Okay, first way of doing it, I'm trying to get x by itself, so I'm going to subtract both sides by 10. Therefore, on the left hand side, I'm going to get left with negative x over 2 is equal to 17 subtract 10, which is 7. Now, at this stage here, I'm going to have to multiply both sides by 2 here to undo this divide by 2. So I'm going to multiply by 2 here, multiply by 2 here, and the negative still there. Don't forget there was a negative there, so I'm going to get negative x is equal to 7 multiplied by 2, which is 14. But I wanted to find x, not negative x, so I'd have to multiply both sides at the very end by negative 1, just to make it have x equals. Negative 1 multiplied by negative x is positive x, and negative 1 multiplied by positive 14 is negative 14. And my answer is actually negative 14 here. And check it works. Negative 14 divided by 2 is negative 7. 10 subtract negative 7 is like 10 add 7, which is 17. Maybe it would have been easier to multiply by negative 1 right at the outset. I think it would have, guys. If you multiply both sides by negative 1 at the very outset, anything that was negative becomes positive, anything that was positive becomes negative. I could rewrite this whole thing as x over 2 now being positive, but this time take away 10 is equal to negative 17. Now what I'd do is I'd add 10 to both sides, and I'd get myself x over 2 is negative 17 add 10, which is negative 7. Now I'd multiply both sides by 2, and I'd get myself that x is equal to negative 7 multiplied by 2 is negative 14. And I think that way might be slightly easier, but it's up to you. And that's it for this video. Thanks very much for watching.